Namaskar, I'm Harpreet Kaur and I welcome you all to our live and interactive session. You're watching us on PMeVIDYA channel number 6 and also on our YouTube channel Ncert Official. Well, this session is meant specially for the students of class 6 and the subject that we have taken up today is English. Under the subject English, we are going to learn lesson number 1 from your textbook. Yes, it's chapter 1 titled Raven and the Fox. Since the session is live and interactive, you can always give us a call, you can write an email to us or you can drop in your comments. So for the phone number, just take it down. It is 8800 440 is flashing on your screen and the email ID is dth.class6@ciet.nic.in. And you are watching us live on our YouTube channel Ncert Official. You can always go to the comment section and you can just drop in your questions, comments, suggestions, feedback over there. Whatever it is related to the topic, feel free to get in touch with us. And to understand what exactly we are looking forward to in the session, we are joined by our expert. So let's welcome him. We have with us Dr. Amit Ranjan. Sir, namaskar and welcome to the session.
Thank you.
Sir is Assistant Professor of English in CIET NCERT Delhi and sir, I request you to kindly share a brief overview with all of us about what exactly we are going to learn in this session. And since this chapter has been introduced for the students of class 6, so what is going to be the learning outcome for them?
Sure. So this is from the new book Purvi, which is prepared according to NEP 2020 and it's just been launched this year in schools. And we are very excited about it. So we are also preparing other programs for PMeVIDYA channels and Diksha platforms. So you should check that out as well.
Sure.
And multiple kinds of programs, not just lessons, but vocabulary exercises, puns, homonyms. So we are doing a lot of things with this book. This is a very interesting poem, a fable, a folk tale called The Raven and the Fox. Which is by a French poet called Jean de La Fontaine.
Okay.
So this is very similar to various folk tales that we have heard, fables in our culture. It's across all cultures. It is about greed and flattery, that people get greedy and lose what they have.
Yes.
And we have similar tales in Panchtantra, in Jatak, Hitopadesh and across different cultures you will see this kind of story. So in our own culture we have the story of the dog who barks at himself, seeing his reflection, loses his morsel of food. We have two cats fighting and the monkey takes advantage of it.
Yeah.
So this one is a similar one with an interaction between raven, which is a bird like a crow, much bigger, much blacker. Generally not found in our parts, but raven is a very common bird in Europe and America. And the fox. A fox is always considered wily and crafty and
very
clever.
Yeah.
All right. So actually, so the fox is called Reynard. And these stories have circulated in Europe for centuries, for the past almost 1,000 years. In English, in French, in German, in Dutch, various cultures. So any Western European country that you go to, whether it's United Kingdom or Germany or Netherlands or France, you will find the story of Reynard the Fox.
Okay.
So on our screen right now, as you can see on the left is a 13th century representation. So in the year 1200, stories of Reynard the Fox, and the other one is from 19th century from a children's book by Michel Rodanger in 1869. So for 1,000 years these tales of Reynard the Fox have been circulating, and of those tales this crow tale is one. So here it will appear that Reynard the Fox is the villain in this particular poem, but many more stories are sympathetic towards the fox as well. So it's very interesting how over 1,000 years these stories have evolved, and there's deep moral lessons as there are in fables in these stories. So a little bit about Reynard. So you would notice that the raven is called Raven, does not have a name, but the fox has a name called Reynard.
Yeah.
And I'd like to talk a little about the history of this name.
But so why so? Why the fox has been given a
Yeah,
name?
exactly. So as we can see on this slide, um, you can see the word Reginhard or Reginohardus, which is Latin transferred to French, and it means strong in counsel. Counsel means advice. So somebody who gives sound advice, somebody who gives good advice, and therefore is crafty, has a sharp brain. And so Reginohardus in Latin became Reginhard in French, and gradually so in French also the word for a fox is not Reynard, but it is Goupil, Goupil, as you can see in point number 3. But these stories became so popular that, for example, in childhood we used to read Champak.
Yeah.
And the rabbit is called Chiku.
Yes.
So eventually Chiku became a metaphor
Yeah, to rabbit.
of a rabbit. So
Yeah.
when you say Chiku, it means
Yes.
rabbit, or the various other names. How things acquire. For example, we say Xerox. It's photocopy. Xerox
Yes.
is a brand.
It's a
Xerox
brand,
is
it's a company, yes.
So there are many such words where the brand acquires. So similarly, Reynard is a brand. It's the name of a popular story which got incorporated into language. So now in French, it completely replaced the original word Goupil, Goupil, which was from Latin vulpicula.
But it's a nice trivia that you have shared.
Absolutely. And in English, we still use for fox, the adjective is not foxy, but vulpine. So when you say that that person is vulpine, it means that that person is very clever and crafty. So for example, we have an example over here from Henry David Thoreau, who was a very important writer of 19th century America. In his book Walden, here you can read, sometimes one came near my window, attracted by my light, barked a vulpine curse at me, and then retreated. That's about a fox that visits him in this thing.
So this is quite interesting, and absolutely, even in India, in Panchatantra, we have many stories that has that have character of fox in it, though we have given different names, but it's quite interesting. Gopal.
Yeah, one of the popular names is Chamtak.
Chamtak, True.
It's all right. So let us look at the poem, and then we'll go in a second reading line by line. But first, let's read it. Mr. Raven was perched upon a limb, and Reynard the fox looked up at him. For the raven held in his great big beak a morsel the fox would go far to seek. Said the fox in admiring tones, "My word, Sir Raven, you're a handsome bird. Such feathers, if only you would sing, the birds of these woods would call you king." The raven, who did not see the joke, forgot that his voice was just a croak. He opened his beak in his foolish pride, and down fell the morsel. The fox had eyed. "Ha ha," laughed the fox, "and now you know, ignore sweet words that make you glow. Pride, my friend, is rather unwise. I'm sure this teaching is quite a surprise."
Lovely poem. Indeed.
Beautiful four stanzas, and it's got a rhyme scheme of AB. So the first and the second line rhyme in every couplet. So these are known as couplets, where two lines rhyme and then you move to the next rhyme. Okay. And the first one you see is a very interesting rhyme, limb and him. So it does not end in IMB, but limb, the B is almost...
But they've risen.
Yeah, it's almost silent. The B is almost silent upon a limb and him. All right, so let's go over it line by line and figure out what the poet de La Fontaine wants to say. Mr. Raven was perched upon a limb, which means, perched means to be standing precariously on something. So generally it relates to a tree bark only. So Mr. Raven, which is like a crow, was perched upon a limb. So he was on 1 feet. So crows have 2 feet, but he was perched on 1 foot. So you've often seen birds on 1 foot, not on both feet, right? And Reynard the fox looked up at him. So he was on the bark of a tree, and the fox looks up at him. For the raven held in his great big beak a morsel the fox would go far to seek. So the raven had in his beak a morsel. A morsel is a piece of food. So it could be a chapati, bread, whatever. And which the fox would go far to seek. So the fox would have to spend all day finding food.
Yeah.
And here was ready-made food.
Yes, but in somebody else's beak.
But in somebody else's mouth. So the fox thinks what to do, how to get this food out of the raven's mouth. So the fox says in admiring tones, "My word." So this is an exclamatory. My word is just that. Upon my word. It's a short form of upon my word. He says, "Take my word. I'm speaking the truth. You are a handsome bird. You're a beautiful bird. Such feathers, and you're not just beautiful. Your feathers are beautiful. If only you would sing." He says, "Your personality is amazing. If only you were a singer also, then everybody would call you a king.
Yeah.
Then that would be perfect. Right
Perfect,
now,
100%.
everybody sees you as beautiful, but they don't know how powerful a personality you are. That you are a singer also. That you are complete, raven.
Complete in your, in itself, the whole package.
Absolutely." So the raven who did not see the joke. So of course it was a joke because crows and ravens croak. They have a very bad voice. So he didn't see the joke, he was flattered. And this is the moral of the entire poem, flatter. Flatter means to give compliment to somebody which is not sincere.
Yes.
So
Not the genuine ones, but have some ulterior motives, I guess.
absolutely, and it's wrong factually also. The raven may be beautiful in all its blackness and its jet black. So, but he should know that his voice is not. So one should know one's strengths and weaknesses.
Weaknesses, yes.
And many people succumb to flattery because we all like listening to good things about us, but we should be self-aware and critical. Like we are critical of others, we should also be critical of ourselves.
We all want to be appreciated and liked and loved and cared for, but eventually you have to, look inside you who you really are.
Absolutely.
As you said, identify your strengths and weaknesses.
And not fall for false flattery.
Absolutely.
So Raven, who did not see the joke, forgot that his voice was just a croak. So croak is like a frog's croak. It's just a guttural sound produced from the neck, but it's not melodious like a koel's or any other birds. He opened his beak. So to sing, he opens his beak because he's been praised in his foolish pride, and down fell the morsel the fox had eyed. So the morsel that the fox had been eyeing, now it fell because the crow opened its mouth and the morsel fell. And so the fox laughs. He fell for the trick. Ha ha, laughed the fox, and now you know. Ignore sweet words that make you glow. So he gives the raven advice that he should ignore sweet words that make you glow. So one should always be wary of people who talk in too much sugar-coated words about qualities that you may not have. And the fox then says, "Pride, my friend, is rather unwise. I'm sure this teaching is quite a surprise." So of course it's a major surprise for the crow. He didn't expect this to happen.
Yes.
He was singing to impress the fox, and here he lost his food, and now he'll have to hunt for his food. Whereas the fox gains that food just by flattering somebody.
Yes. So fox is actually very much aware of her qualities. She knows that she has got, I would say, wonderful wit, and she is cunning enough to get the work done, and she did it. Whereas on the other side, the raven was not aware of his own strengths and weaknesses, and he fell for that joke.
Absolutely. And so there's a whole set of these stories, hundreds of Reynard stories, and so you should go online and find more Reynard the fox stories which will involve different animals and different morals. And then the task for you children is to compare them with what we have in Panchtantra, to compare the stories and see how they are similar and different and what kind of moral lessons to derive from them.
Yes.
All right. So let's do a recap. We have two characters in this poem, Mr. Raven and Reynard the fox. Mr. Raven is a vain bird. Vain means somebody who's too self-confident, full of themselves, proud of themselves, with a deep voice. And Reynard the fox is a clever trickster with a silver tongue. So these are idioms that also I want you to learn over here. Vain and silver tongue. Silver tongue is where your tongue shines. So it's a metaphor for somebody who has the ability to speak very well, to convince other people. Somebody with a silver tongue is somebody who is very convincing.
Convincing, right.
Right. So once again,
sir, before you move ahead, here I want to ask you, what lesson should our kids derive from this poem? Because it has been introduced for class 6 students. So what they should learn?
So what needs to be learned is what we just discussed, is that we should not be proud, we should not be vain, we should not be greedy, and the most important lesson is we should beware of flattery. If anybody praises us for no reason, then it should always be a red flag. It should raise an alarm that there's something wrong and you need to be on your guard, and not given. It's like a ditch covered with grass. It looks very beautiful, but you step on it, you fall into the ditch. So it's like that. So one should always be aware of false praise. One should be self-aware of one's strengths and weaknesses. And if somebody gives you a compliment about something that you're not, though you want to be praised for it, you should know that if somebody is praising you for it, there's something wrong.
And that's how you can actually make out whether the person is genuine or not.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's do a recap of the poem. The perch. So once again, perch is to sit on a bark of a tree specifically, and otherwise also it's used in terms of anything lying on any other thing. So the raven sits on a branch with morsel in its beak, and then the perch is followed by the temptation. The fox tempts the raven with flattering him about his sweet voice. And that's the scheme, that the crow would get flattered, he would start singing, and his roti would fall into the lap of the fox. All right, so let's look at the interesting words over here which we've already mentioned, but a recap so that we can remember them. Perched is sitting or resting on something, particularly on a tree bark. It's specifically used in the sense of birds. Then a morsel, we've seen again and again, is a small piece of food, a tasty bite, a morsel of bread, a morsel of a roti, which a raven can hold very well. Admiring is a word that you probably know, looking at something with pleasure and approval, something that you like looking at, that's an object of admiration. And croak is a harsh, deep sound made by some animals like the crow, the raven, the frog. All right. How does the fox flatter the raven? First, he compliments him on his appearance. You are a handsome bird. So there's a whole strategy involved that the fox
and
uses.
I think that's the most basic way to flatter somebody. Just compliment the person on his or her appearance and the person will surely fall for you.
Yeah, and it's by degrees. So first he says something that is convincing, and then he goes to something that is not convincing. So the art of flattery, the fox tells us, is by beginning mildly and then going wildly.
So there is entire technique behind it.
Yeah. So first he calls him a handsome bird. Some people may agree, some people may disagree. I think raven is a very handsome bird, so the fox is right.
Okay.
And then he praises his feathers. And then he says, oh, if you would only sing, people would call you the king. And then he tempts him with royalty. That's the ultimate temptation, to be called the king, to be called the leader of everyone. Everybody wants to imagine themselves in that position. So he gradually, by and by, with his appearance, then going to his voice, then proposing him that you can be the king of the jungle instead of the lion if you sang well.
And these days, we have many words that generally we use. I think let's call it modern lingo, like identifying the red flags or bombing somebody with the praises. That's what the fox is doing over here.
So that term is called sycophancy. So flattering, and the person who does it is called a sycophant.
Psychophant,
Which in Hindi is chamcha. So somebody who unnecessarily praises a leader, their boss at office, so that things like that, and the person falls for it.
Yes.
So there's this very interesting story of the king who was naked, and this is also a folk tale.
Yes, very popular one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so nobody can tell the king to his face that he's sitting naked in the court.
Yes.
So everybody is praising, oh
What
Maharaj, what beautiful
shining,
robes you
beautiful
have.
robe, yes.
And then there's a little kid who does not know these things.
Yeah.
He does not know why these foolish people are flattering the king like that, and he just says, oh, but the king is totally naked, he's not wearing anything. So that's one of those stories. So find out more stories where people fall prey to flattery, and what happens.
Absolutely.
All right.
So I mean, we are left with last 2 minutes.
So
yes.
we're just wrapping up. And so what is the problem with the raven? The first problem is pride. He becomes puffed up with vanity. So this is also one of the very important lessons that we take back from here with this lesson, is that we should never be vain and we should never be proud. That leads to false conclusion, false self-image, and also forgetfulness.
Yeah.
Vanity leads to forgetfulness. We sometimes forget what our weaknesses are.
Yes.
So, your friends may fool you by saying you can sing very well, whereas you may not be able to. It's just a prank to fool you. Mistake, and eventually it leads to a mistake that he opens his beak to sing. Even if he thought that he sings well, first he should have eaten his morsel or kept it aside on the branch and then sang. But he is too much in a haste.
And haste makes waste.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a beautiful story. Would you like to share the morals, sir, very quickly?
So the morals, as we just talked about, one should beware of flattery, one should avoid pride, and we should learn from our mistakes. So now that the raven knows that this has happened, he should not repeat this mistake in future when he meets another reynard, another fox on the way.
Absolutely.
We should always learn from our mistake and not repeat them.
I think it's even more important to identify your weaknesses, than your strengths, so that you can work upon them and you can be a better version of yourself. So with that, it's a wrap. It was a beautiful poem, I would say. Beautiful poem with, I would say, fabulous lessons and teachings. The Raven and the Fox. Sir, thank you so much
for
your contribution to this session. It was amazing. I learned a lot, and I'm sure that you also learned too. And with this, I am winding up the session over here. But before I leave the studio, let's take a look at the schedule. What's all coming ahead for you? So in a short while from now, you can watch another session of ours that will be live and interactive on the subject social science. Topic will be oceans and continents. This will be followed by another session at 4 o'clock titled Understanding Game Security Features. And last but not the least, we will bring you another live session at 5 p.m. Sahyog. So that was for today's session. There's a complete list. You can watch all the sessions on YouTube. ncertofficial is the channel. These are uploaded. And it's time for me to take leave of you. Take care and stay tuned for more educational programs. Namaskar.